And now, here's your host of Shaping Success, Wes Tankersley.
Hello and welcome to Shaping Success. I'm your host, Wes Tankersley. This is episode 36. If you can do me a favor, if you're watching this on the live show, please start a watch party. If you are tuning in on the podcast, please like, share, and review this. Help us to grow the show. Today, like I said, is episode 36. My guest is Anthony Flask, an athlete by trade, former baseball player, became a strength and conditioning coach for an MLB team, started his own company, being a strength and conditioning coach, now the CEO and founder of Drink Alchemy. Anthony, welcome to the show.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Wes.
Hey, man, it's good to have you on here. I was introduced to you by my friend, Zach Johnson, who is also your friend, and he is also the vice president of your new company. Right. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself, kind of where you grew up, things like that, and all the relevant information?
Yes, absolutely. And yeah, Zach's an amazing guy and really appreciate him linking us up. But yeah, so as far as I go, I'm a typical Midwest kid. I grew up in a very small town in Kansas of about 2,000 people. So there's really not a lot of hoopla around that. I was I would love to say average student growing up, but I was actually really a poor student. As far as that, I went to school to play sports. So I didn't go to, like, Texas is a big kind of sports town. I think that would have been an amazing spot for me. But for me, it was Kansas, small town Kansas. I love sports, grew up playing it, started out in baseball, like most kids do, not being able to play contact sports. Through high school, I got involved with football and baseball. Yeah, just wanted to pursue a dream. I really wanted to leave that small town kind of vibe, if you will, and make it out in the big world and see what's really possible outside of, when you're in a setting like that, people tend to get stuck and do the same old thing, the same old routine. And I had seen the people that I look up to get stuck in that rut. And that's not something I wanted. So I was using sports as kind of a catalyst into getting into bigger and better things for myself.
Yeah, and so that led to kind of a career in some independent baseball, right? So you got out of high school, got a little bit of baseball going. How did that happen?
Yeah, well, that's actually kind of the plan B was baseball. So like I said, I grew up playing baseball initially, and I was really good for my area. That's kind of the big fish, small pond kind of analogy there. And when I started playing football, I absolutely loved it. And like a typical guy, you want what you can't have. So I only got to play football through junior high and high school. So there's kind of a development issue there, but I was absolutely in love with it. Going through high school, my goal was to go on and play college football. And I actually had a few offers coming out of high school. I was looked at by Pittsburgh State, which is a Division II school, winning all kinds of national championships. But my hopes and dreams were kind of set on the University of Hawaii because my aunt actually lived out there. So I got in contact with both the football and the baseball coaches out there and had a lot of interest. And that was my plan to get out of Kansas. Pretty drastic move. But as I said initially, I was a really poor student. I don't think I ever did a day of homework. All that kind of stuff just, I did what I had to do to play sports. And my senior year is when it hit me, when I saw that I got rejected to go to the school. I had walk-on opportunities for football and baseball, and that kind of put a hard stop on my life. What am I going to do now? So obviously, the next best thing is junior college, and that's something that I wanted to avoid. But I ended up going to Butler County, and Butler County's got a really amazing football program, but I ended up playing football and baseball out there. Again, football was my focus, but I was pretty decent at baseball. And when I found out that, Butler County can recruit, I wasn't going to get the kind of playing time that I wanted to with football. So before I even made it into the baseball season, I was transferring out of community college. I became a straight A student in community college after I saw the effects of what grades have on your life trajectory. So I became, I was president or dean's honor roll first semester, and then transferred to a D2 school, again, to play football and baseball. This was Emporia State, and kind of ran into the same thing. I didn't have the skill set in football to kind of make it to the next level. So Yeah, I was searching everywhere. There's a lot of soul searching in what I wanted to do, but I finally ended up, after a short detour at an NAIA school to try the same thing, football, baseball. I ended up going out to Wichita State. And before I graduated with baseball, I ended up signing a contract to play independently.
Yeah, and so did that kind of peter out? Because I see that there's some other things here too that we want that are really cool. But you actually after that started to become a strength and conditioning coach, right? Is that kind of where that led? Where did you go after that situation?
Yeah. So, I mean, when I started playing independent and focused on baseball, really the thing that was told to me through football was you're too small. Yeah, you can't compete, et cetera, et cetera. I graduated high school at 6'3", 100 and roughly 70 pounds. And I had gotten up to about 210 by the time I went to Wichita State. So I had made it, and that's when things really started changing for me. And then obviously getting into independent ball, I could hang a little bit better with the talent that's at that level. So for me, it was really the development in the weight room where I saw my abilities blossom. I could really showcase that what I had as far as natural talent could only be communicated through this body I had that I built in the weight room. So that's when I made the decision that strength and conditioning was a passion of mine, because I didn't want any kid to have a dream like I had, not be able to attain the things they wanted to attain because of their size. So it was really a passion project for me to go into strength and conditioning, and I went at that wholeheartedly with a mission to help anyone out there who had the same kind of mindset I had in high school.
Yeah, it's really interesting because I'm listening to you tell this story, and it kind of just reminds me of myself, because I was kind of the same way. I didn't get any good grades until my senior year, and I got a 4.0 my senior year to get a 3.0 GPA for my accumulative, right? And so it was interesting. I got a scholarship to play NAIA football at Southern Oregon University, and I thought I was way better than that. But I was an offensive lineman, and I'm 6'3", and I was like 260. I thought, I'm a Pac-10 player, and I just tried so hard to make that happen, and it just didn't happen. So I turned down the NAIA and ended up not doing anything. So that's awesome that you went to try to go after that and continue to push through it, because I myself just saw it as like, it's not for me. And I kind of gave up on football. I was a little bit the opposite, because I was not a great baseball player, but I love baseball, and I was a pretty dang good football player. So it's just like deja vu listening to you talk about it. So you ended up in some awesome coaching positions, though, as well. You were strength and conditioning independently, and then now you end up with like the Milwaukee Brewers. Is that what I see here?
Yeah. So actually, I pretty much started over when I was chasing an athletic career. So I hadn't even obtained a bachelor's degree yet when I left to pursue as professional as I could be with independent baseball. And when that didn't pan out, as the theme seems to be, I decided to go back to school, pursue strength and conditioning. And obviously, you don't have a whole lot of opportunities when you decide what you want to do outside of being an athlete comes when you're 22 years old. I had already been to, 3 or 4 different schools. I kind of used up whatever eligibility I had. I had gone and gotten paid to play, so there's no going back to finish up any last seasons. So I kind of went into Kansas State University, starting brand new. Whatever credits I had, that would transfer over. And I started volunteering. So there was actually a really small Christian college right across the street that sits adjacent from the campus of Kansas State University. And I volunteered there. They're not even NAIA. They're like NCCAA, which is just the Christian Association. I think there was 80 or 90 kids that were enrolled at this entire college, and we had a whopping 14 kids on the college baseball program. But that's where I cut my teeth, and it got me opportunities to go coach baseball at the high school level at Manhattan High School there in Kansas. And then that turned, as I progressed through school, I got opportunities with the university where I worked with like women's volleyball and basketball, track and field. At that time, it was the London Olympics, so I got to work with Eric Kynard, who won the silver medal then. I dabbled in a little bit of football. That was where I got the bulk of my experience. And from that, having a big baseball background, there was actually an NAIA in Kansas that was looking for a strength and conditioning coach / assistant baseball coach. That was like a dream come true for me. So I spent 2 years in Lindsborg, Kansas. Bethany College was it. And that's actually where I met the CRO for my current company, Drink Alchemy, JC Bird. He was a pitcher in that program. Spent 2 years out there learning the ropes. And then I met a guy that was a cheerleading coach who was really good friends with Jonathan Lucroy, who was with the Brewers. And they were looking for a strength coach. So it's really amazing how the pieces started to fall in once you kind of align yourself with putting your heart and emotion into a given profession. So I got a hold of Jonathan Lucroy, and then got a hold of the strength and conditioning staff, and started coaching with the Milwaukee Brewers, starting out there, Maryville, Arizona. I had actually lived in Chandler, Arizona. Worked with the boys coming in for spring training, and then stayed on for the rookie teams, which they is just called summer ball. It's not low A, it's lower than low A. These are all the guys that are doing rehab, all the guys that are just got drafted that come in and do their processing, and then I kind of worked my way through the field. Yeah, that's how I got my kind of credentials in professional sports.
Did you get a degree through this whole thing in conditioning and strength and conditioning, or where did that end up happening?
Oh yeah. So backtrack just a little bit. I graduated from Kansas State and actually picked up both my bachelor's and my master's degrees in exercise physiology and human performance. So I had quite a bit of knowledge for these areas. So that's kind of what led to my opportunities, is finally finishing up that schooling.
Well, I got to hand it to you, because I'll tell you what, I have 2 degrees, and they're both in education. I'm a PE teacher because I could not make it as an athletic trainer through the schooling. So to be someone who's not a very good student in high school and be able to get through XPhys, that's awesome. That's no small feat. And I don't know that people really understand how hard it is to get through a degree like that.
Yeah, I mean, I had in the passion in the program is what got me through. I'm not trying to learn about, the general curriculum. So exercise phys was enjoyable for me.
And the funny thing about it, like the only thing that kept me out of it was math. I was a terrible math student, and there was no way that I was going to make it happen. So I know how much math is involved in it, even though it doesn't really need to be. So it's kind of crazy. So after the baseball with the Brewers and stuff, you ended up going out on your own and starting your own company, correct? Your own strength and conditioning company. So how long is that's kind of slowed down with COVID, right? That's kind of what brought you to the Drink Alchemy, is the fact that COVID stopped your training programs, correct?
No, not necessarily. When I worked for all these organizations, I really felt like I had someone putting their thumb on top of me. And my creativity and all these things that I have learned and had tried out and had really good success with, I was stuck in sort of this iron age of thinking where it's very bland and very simplistic, and I thought I could do more. That's what led me to kind of branching out and wanting to start my own company. And I was working with some of these athletes during the off season, some of these professional athletes with really good results. So I knew that I could be successful on my own. So out in New York City, I just built up my business and got involved with quite a few high profile athletes. And that really kind of snowballed my career there. And, fast forward through the 2.5 years that I was doing strength and conditioning privately and doing some stuff with the Olympic team and the Olympic committee and traveling around with them. Fast forward to that, and we hit COVID. And COVID was kind of a blessing for me, actually. When you're working for yourself, you have to make huge sacrifices. And for me, it was, if I want to get to anywhere I want to be financially, I have to trade this huge chunk of time. And I went from, 32 to 34 years old in what seemed like a blink of an eye. I was working 6 days a week from, my days were usually split. I'd be up early in the morning when it was dark. I'd work till midday, come home. And then after dinner, I'd be back in New York City. I'm training till 9:30, 10 at night. And I was doing this 6 days a week. And I just wasn't doing what I wanted to do as far as freedom and financials with this huge trade in time. And I knew something else was on the horizon. So when COVID hit, it was this huge blessing. All of a sudden, these people drop off. I was very fortunate that most of my clients saw such value in my services that we just moved them online and pretty seamlessly. But that freed up a ton of time, and that's where Drink Alchemy was born. Always wanted to create some sort of company, substantial company where we have moving pieces and it's scalable and we can leave a footprint for the better on the world. Because with my strength and conditioning business, I was bringing in friends and paying them to handle some of the clients, which would free up some of my time, and that really wasn't working out. So COVID hit, and Drink Alchemy was really the blessing that I've been waiting for. COVID couldn't have come at a better time as far as a shutdown and having to stop and look internally on what do you want to do with your life.
Yeah, so we'll talk about Drink Alchemy in a minute because we kind of glossed over something and we were chatting a little bit before the show. I want to talk a little bit about this. You said that you were helping train with the Olympic team. Who were you training? What kind of training were you doing? Who were your athletes that you were training with this Olympic team?
Yeah, so like I said, it started out when I was at Kansas State University. I worked with Eric Kynard, who was track and field, who went to the London Games, went to Rio Games, won a silver medal there in London. And when I moved up and started working with professional athletes, I got some contacts out the New York City area to open up my own business. And my first client out there was actually Dagmar Wozniak, who is a three-time United States Olympian. And she actually won. She was just coming off a bronze medal in Rio. And I had started working with her. And that was my first big East Coast client. From there, I still work with some clients, which I have a non-disclosure agreement on, where I can't say because we have been hounded. But if you follow basketball, oh my gosh, I can't think of his name now. Oh, and Chris Brinkley. I work with some of his athletes, but that's kind of where it got started, was with Dagmar Wozniak and her achievements in the Olympics.
Now she's the fencer, right? Is she the one we were talking about? So we're talking about fencing, and I know that the people, like I talked to you about it before, it's like I always think of it as just as sword fighting, but there has got to be some pretty cool training that they have to do to be able to make that happen. And you had that was your first fencing athlete that you work with, or had you worked with them before?
No, this was my first fencing athlete. So I was so excited because I had worked predominantly in baseball with my strength and conditioning career. And I had started to see the same things over and over, and the kind of treatments became mundane. And once you figured them out, then you could start building. So when I met Dagmara, it was an entire new sport, and she had a myriad of different problems that were plaguing her. So kind of my style on strength and conditioning is more the biomechanics of it, is where I kind of set myself apart. And when I seen what was happening with her, fencing's a one-sided power sport. When you see any fencing athlete, you'll know they're fencing right away because they'll have one big leg and one big ass cheek. And the other side's kind of atrophied because it did as much. So that was really interesting for me to go in there and start training her. And for her, strength and conditioning wise, it was really just a major deload. She had been training for so long and so hard on these specific movements. And I hate to say it, but she was working with some people who didn't know what the hell they were doing, and were increasing these sort of asymmetries. So we had to back up and start from the basics and build up her non-dominant side. And the training was the thing that helped her most, was going back to basics and actually starting to work the side that hadn't been worked. And that's an approach that she had never seen before. So that obviously, I look like a genius then, right? Seems logical, but...
Hey, that's a pretty sweet story, because I feel like, you get from all these sports that you're so used to. And like I said, I don't know a whole bunch about it other than the fact that you see them sometimes fencing. It's hilarious that this guy who's football, baseball, all of a sudden he's in fencing, and he figured out what was plaguing this person and turned that around. So that's pretty sweet story. Let's talk about Drink Alchemy now. This is it's like an energy drink, right? Or why don't you go ahead and tell us what it actually is?
Okay, yeah. And I think it's important to state here, the idea behind Drink Alchemy was to help our athletes. It was initially something that we thought up to kind of enhance what our athletes could do, because what I found through my strength and conditioning business is that a lot of these things that were happening with these athletes were in the mind. So the first thing that we did, like I said, breaking everything down, it was a mental process. When you do things, it's like if you're right-handed and I tell you to start writing left-handed, you're going to suck at it. But you could speed those processes up. So that's where Drink Alchemy came about. Again, going back to the kid at Bethany, who's now the chief research officer at Drink Alchemy, JC Bird. He actually turned me on to nootropics when I was looking for ways to help accelerate these athletes. Because, no athlete comes to you when things are good. They come to you when everything's gone to shit, when they have 2 weeks before a competition or something that you don't have enough time to work with them. So he actually launched this idea of you should have them try these nootropics. And these nootropics are cognitive enhancers, and they increase the way your brain works and how fast they go across synapses, all that information. And it creates motor patterns a lot easier. Memory retention's better. It actually restores the axons inside the brain, which again speed up transmission. It can fight against depression, all these huge benefits. And I had some downtime, obviously, with COVID, right? And I was like, hell yeah. So I had actually, before I give anything to my athletes, I was supplementing myself handfuls of pills. So if you actually check out Drink Alchemy's Instagram page, I took a picture of how many pills it was that I was taking every day. And it just popped into my head probably 2 weeks into COVID. And I was like, why the hell am I taking all these pills? Why don't we just put these in a drink and make this a lot easier? Because I had seen so many benefits from it. So that's kind of how it was born, how it was started.
It's not really like an energy drink then. It's more of something that enhances your mind, really, right? What's a nootropic? So you talked a little bit about it and you kind of hinted around it that it helps with your mind and things like that. One of the things that we were talking about in this group I was listening to today, we were talking about me getting ready to interview you, and they're like, well, what's a nootropic? So what kind of is that? What does that do?
Nobody really had known about this. When I had first started looking into it, I was like, man, I don't know. I don't know, because the first thing that I looked up was lion's mane mushroom, and I found out that it's a close relative to a magic mushroom. The only difference is it doesn't have the psilocybin, the psychedelic that's in it. The benefits that came from that magic mushroom, again, talking about how it preserves your brain and your mood state, and the things that are contained in it were contained in this lion's mane mushroom. So that got me thinking, okay, nootropics are mushrooms, right? But when you start looking at it, nootropics are really kind of any ingredient that their main focus is on some sort of change or adaptation that happens in the mind. So nootropic, broken down from Greek, basically just means a new mind or a mind genesis, if you will. So yeah, that in a nutshell is what nootropics are. If you've seen the movie Limitless with Bradley Cooper, that's based on nootropics and seeing things clearly. Obviously, it's exaggerated, but processing things faster and having this almost superhuman ability, that was all based on the initial study of nootropics.
Yeah, that's interesting. That was the first thing that I was thinking about when you started talking about it was Limitless, because, he takes that pill and all of a sudden everything is just firing and he's using his whole brain. So
right.
That's an system there. So tell me about alchemy. I looked up the definition. Why name it Drink Alchemy?
Yeah, so I wasn't a great student, but I loved to read. I loved to find out things for myself and things that I was passionate about. And one of the books I read was The Alchemist. And The Alchemist had all these really crazy sort of abstract things that tie to your life. And it reminded me of my own journey. So I became sort of interested in this alchemy. And when I started to look up definitions of it, and I thought this was perfect, alchemy is literally taking something ordinary and making it extraordinary. So in the case of metals, for example, they would want to take lead and turn it into gold. Now, if we're talking about modern alchemy, my whole business with strength and conditioning was taking somebody ordinary like myself who had a problem lifting weights in high school, and I wanted to make them extraordinary through just putting in that grit. So obviously alchemy became almost like a moral driving factor in my life. So when we find nootropics, that's exactly our intention. We want to take kind of the ordinary functioning of the mind and turn it into an extraordinary process.
It's funny listening to you tell that and start to think about kind of like your past and how you were a terrible student, how you've just kind of unleashed this, into what you are now. So I see that as, kind of some alchemy there too, because you've changed yourself from this to that. You launched the pre-orders today, right? How is that going?
Pre-orders are going great, just as expected. The funny thing about starting a business is the people that the people that you grow up with, right, are the first people to say, hey, man, that's really cool. I support you, but then when it comes down to let's show some support, here's a pre-order, they're not around, and it's really hard to click like on Instagram these days, it like hurts your fingers and things, or share things. So I totally get that. But the amount of support that we had from people that we had met on this new journey was absolutely overwhelming. Shows you who believes in this process. And day number one, we're overwhelmed. We had a meeting about it this afternoon called like a little emergency meeting, just to be like giddy little girls and say, oh my God, guys, like this is awesome.
I like the fact that you talked about that because, like you said, it's really hard for people right now, knowing how like this podcast goes and sharing it and things like that. When you start into something new, people are there to support you, but they're not there to, kind of push you along. And so they do kind of disappear. Like, hey, I'm so happy for what you're doing. Hey, can you share this post? Where'd you go? You're gone.
Yeah.
So
100%. Huh.
Before we get to the last question here, what can you tell us where we can find you? Because, I think you got a great story. We want lots of people to support every guest that we have. You kind of came from the bottom, and it reminds me so much of my story. It's just crazy. Where can we find you? Because I know you got some Instagram. What else do you have? Where can we find you?
Quite honestly, I'm only active, if you will, on my Instagram page, which is Flask, the Alchemist. And then, I'll dabble in our company Instagram, which is drinkalchemy.co. But other than that, I try to keep a small footprint. I'll get on LinkedIn and connect with the people there. But yeah, I'm really just on Instagram to support guys like you and Zach and the people out there that need this huge audience to reach your dreams.
Well, I have to say, I really appreciate you taking the time to be on here. And that is a great thing, is that everyone's here to support everyone. And I really like running into people like you and like Zach, because you have the same mindset. You want people to grow. You want people to be successful. Thanks for doing that. We're going to go to this last question here real quick. What is the shape of your success? How would you define success, as it is different for every single individual?
That's almost a religion of a question, right? It's super deep and introspective. And for me, success is really defined or synonymous with action. I really believe that people can accomplish whatever they want to accomplish. The thing that really holds them back is taking that first step, taking action whatsoever. We all have the various things that weigh on us, but take action. Success follows 100% of the time.
I love it. You cannot reach your success without taking action. Thank you for taking the time to be on here. And I wish you nothing but luck with this business. It sounds like it's doing great from the get-go. And hopefully we can help you kind of spread the word. I'll be posting about this interview on my social media, which I kind of post everywhere. So if you see it, feel free to share it, and we'll try and get the word out and help you out a little bit more.
Appreciate you, Wes.
Yeah, thank you very much. Hey, so everyone, that's the end of the show. I wanted to say thank you again for tuning in. Until next time, I want to challenge you to find the shape of your success.